Well, joining me now from Davao is Datu Mussolini Lidasan. He is a commissioner for the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. And in Manila, defense consultant Jose Custodio. Thanks both so much for joining us on the Newsmakers. Jose, let me begin with you. Duterte would like to hail this as a victory, and it may prove to be, but first it has to go to a referendum. Where do you think that referendum will actually go? What do the people genuinely want?
Well, basically, people genuinely want peace, okay? So, on the ground, people would most likely be favorable with what's going on here, okay? But that's, like I said, that the thing is that it's still in the beginning stages. There's a lot of work to be done, okay? So, even if the law is passed, and if the law is the referendum is passed and the people support it, the thing is, what is important is the actual programs and policies that will create the necessary conditions for peace. Will it then be accepted by the various sectors that make up the communities in Mindanao? If these sectors, like for example, the secessionist movement, you know, the military, the communities, the mixed communities, actually, the ethnically mixed communities, if the various sectors there will really from vocal support would actually now commit to peaceful to realize the peaceful agenda of this law.
Okay, let me ask Datu. Datu, do you think the Bangsamoro organic law, as it stands, is the best way, primarily to fight extremism? That it was the religious extremism that Duterte set out to annihilate?
Well, we need to understand the context here that the Bangsamoro peace process has been happening for more than 40 years, and formal peace talks with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front started more or less 20 years ago. So the MILF is for now, is the largest Bangsamoro armed group. And since they started having the formal peace talks, we've seen that there are relatively peaceful communities already in Mindanao. However, because of the government keeps on prolonging the peace process from 1976 with the MNLF, 1996 GRP-MNLF peace agreement, with the CAB, Comprehensive Agreement of the Bangsamoro, and the FAB. So there has been series of evolution of armed groups. And these armed groups are classified by the current administration as violent extremists. We have the BIFF, the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. They evolved when the government failed to pass MOA-AD, the Memorandum of Agreement of the Bangsamoro, during the time of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. When the government failed to pass the Bangsamoro Basic Law during the time of President Aquino, Noynoy Aquino, a new group emerged. This is the Maute, which took over last year, the city of Marawi. So yeah, so the government now is very clear in its mandate to really put a closure to the Bangsamoro peace process by granting the Moro people an organic law that will serve as a way for them to express their right to self-determination.
We understand there is a lot of history here. There are a lot of arguments for the case that the government failed miserably at trying to attain the peace that was needed in the region. But as it stands now, some analysts are still saying that there will be so many legal, constitutional challenges to what this is. And an even bigger problem is that the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, the MILF, isn't really prepared to serve in the political capacity that it would need to serve, the administrative capacity that it would need to serve, to work, to carry out this peace agreement and to administer this region.
Well, first, we in the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, we tried our best to pass an organic law that can will be free from legal infirmities. We have members of the Senate and members of the House of Representatives, Senator Franklin Drilon, former Majority Floor Leader Pareñas. They made sure, and we made sure, and in the BTC, that we pass an organic law that is free from legal infirmities. And we are confident that even if there are some questions in the Supreme Court, this can stand any legal questions. On the question of the MILF absorptive capacity in terms of administration, well, last Sunday, as you can see, I was there. I attended that Bangsamoro assembly. I was together with Chairman Hagi Murad. We were there in that stage. And he was very open. He said that they admit that the Moro Islamic Liberation Front has been in the revolutionary government for several years. And now it's a big challenge for them to shift their mind or to have a paradigm shift in running a government. So that's why it's an inclusive. I myself,
Okay.
I am not an MIL, yeah, but I am part of the government panel, yeah.
Okay. Jose, I could see you weren't quite convinced by some of what Datu had to say.
From the government side, okay, especially from the military side, there is skepticism also about the intentions of the MILF, okay, and its capacity to control the rank and file, okay. At the same time, there's also a lot of distrust, okay, that I said, between the military and the secessionist groups, okay. So I think that can actually be a problem in the as this peace process goes on. Okay, one thing that we have to take into consideration here is that there, hopefully, it doesn't become a pattern now. Okay, but there has been a pattern before, wherein once a rebel organization goes into a peace process with the government, that a breakaway group emerges. Okay, because it doesn't want to accept what the government is, and because, like I said, there are objectives that those who break away feel will not be addressed if they come into compromise with the government. For example, the creation of a genuine Bangsamoro state, okay, and that is not under control of a central government based in Manila. So those things have happened. Okay, I think the first Dato had already mentioned that groups had broken away. Okay, so you had, for example, in the 1970s, you had the Moro National Liberation Front. Then, when it went into a peace agreement with the government, a breakaway group came out, which was the MILF. Okay, and usually it's because of the fact that the central leadership of these rebel organizations have difficulty sometimes in controlling the rank and file. Okay, so
Right.
that will be one big challenge. Okay,
Th-
and the thing also there is that yes.
No, I was just going to say,
Yeah,
I mean,
please go.
there are several major challenges here, and one of them on the topic that you're speaking is about the very weak state institutions that exist right now that have to be built.
Yeah.
And the question about the lack of experience of the new regime that will be in charge in building just those basic institutions, while, of course, dealing with some very serious ethnic tribal rivalries that exist in the region. It is a lot to take on.
Well, the thing is that much of the, although common narrative would be that this is caused by the rebellion is caused by colonial government rule over the Muslim communities. Okay, which causes the rebellion. There are also other factors that create support to rebels in this type of in Mindanao, and one of the topmost reasons would be the feudal political relations that would exist within many Muslim communities, wherein you have families, you have power concentrated on a few, and even if you have a peace treaty, if you have that type of relations, okay, political relations, business relations, elite relations, then you are not really going to address the root problem. So those root problems have to be addressed by a peace treaty. Okay, there should be a corresponding social, economic reform that should happen and I think they all recognize that. Everybody recognizes that. Okay, the only problem is that how are we going to go about it? Okay, there would be a need for political will at the same time, but at the same time there should be a will for a very good strategy to approach that. Okay, the problem, however, with the current administration is that it has shown to have had problems in executing programs that it had started. An example of that is what has been happening in Marawi. Okay,
Right.
despite a year that has passed, there has not been substantial relief operations. Okay, so can
Absolutely.
you imagine now the entire
And dealing with that crushing
Can they pull
crushing
it off?
poverty as well that remains is another major challenge. Even established democracies and governments have struggled to deal with that around the globe. But another issue here that I need to get to with Datu is the agreement as part of this BOL, as it's called, the Bangsamoro Organic Law, is that 30% of the 40,000 or so weapons held by rebel fighters will have to be decommissioned. I need to ask you, Datu, is that realistic? Are you confident that that will happen smoothly as part of this transition?
It's going to face a lot of challenges because it's not only the MILF that are armed groups in Mindanao. Based on our estimates, there are more than 100,000 different armed groups. You also have the private armies, the other lawless elements. So we have to take in consideration that when the normalization, we call it in the peace process as the normalization phase, it must include all other groups because the MILF would definitely not agree if they'll be the only one that will going to be disarmed. So we need the organic law, the Bangsamoro Organic Law, for the phases of the comprehensive agreement of the Bangsamoro to be implemented. And we're hoping that once it is ratified, maybe this coming November or December, and the majority of the people from the ARMM and the 6 municipalities in Lanao del Norte and the 39 barangays, city of Cotabato and Isabela will vote yes, and then smoothly, quote and unquote, we'll have a process of normalization for the Bangsamoro.
Okay, Jose, let me just ask you, do you think the Bangsamoro Organic Law is really the best and only option to move this process forward and achieve peace?
Well, yeah, I believe so, that it's the only way, because several administrations prior to the Duterte administration have been pushing for a law that would address, that would at least jumpstart the peace process. So I think that's why it's very important. Okay, like I said, the previous administration, the Aquino administration, also had the BBL, okay, the Bangsamoro Basic Law. So this is a very necessary piece of legislation, law that needs to be implemented so that at least the conflict will not escalate. I'm not saying, see, let's be realistic here. There will still be conflict, okay? Because not at least coming from the MILF, hopefully, but again from groups within, okay? Especially fringe groups that have much more extremist agendas. Okay, like for example, yesterday, was it yesterday or a day ago, that a bomb went off in a checkpoint in Basilan. So that bomb attack, which caused the deaths of at least 10 people, expect the military to conduct operations. So there will still be conflict, okay? But with that type of law, there is at least a framework that all parties can look to in order to try to limit the conflict that has been going on. So it's the way I see it is that it's something that is useful as a jump starter for something that will eventually be more comprehensive in the future. It's not going to happen within the next few years. I mean, for example, if you just look at what happened in the earlier peace agreement with the Moro National Liberation Front, okay, a lot of things that the Ramos administration had hoped for would happen didn't occur. Okay. And next thing you know, the MNLF itself proved ineffective in even addressing the problem of the existence of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front.
Okay.
So there are and I'm not even talking about the issues of mishandling of funds that came later on. Okay. And so those are the things. Those are the things that will be obstacles on the road. Okay, it looks like it looks so clear cut, but it's actually not.
Absolutely. I think you
Yes.
can both agree somewhat on that. But Jose, I will have to give you the last word because very unfortunately we're out of time for this segment of the Newsmakers. Datu, I'd like to thank you both so much for joining us.